Hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new IAA Monday. Thank you for connecting with us today. Before introducing our guests and the topic, just let me share some words of sympathy and solidarity with the people of Valencia, the people that has been suffering the terrible floods. Our thoughts are with you. We hope you can recover your life somehow very soon. And we will be sharing in the chat a link of a local media in Valencia that is gathering all the entities that are helping the people that suffer the flood. So we will share it in the chat in case anyone wants to help. So, well, let's try to move on in this terrible situation, and let's welcome our guest, Alexander Turtschan, who is the Director of Innovation at Media Plus Group, and who is gonna guide us through the innovations in digital marketing that will shape the trends in 2025. Alexander, thank you for accepting our invitation and share your knowledge with us today. Let me introduce you a bit more about Alexander. He is an expert in digital marketing and innovation. Along his career, he has led projects that integrate technology and marketing, optimizing the use of data and digital tools. Additionally, he's passionate about video games and e-sports and closely follows innovations in this field. Well, we are all dying to listen to you, Alexander. And just a reminder to the audience that they can send questions for Alexander along his presentation. As soon as you have a question, just send it and write it in the chat. We will gather them and we will pass on to him at the end of his presentation for the Q&A slot. Okay, so Alexander, thank you again, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Olga, very much for the introduction, and thanks for having me. As mentioned, I'm the Innovation Director at Media Plus, and we're going to look at trends in not only digital marketing, because I think we have seen quite a big overlap between the real world and the digital world in recent years. And let's start with the presentation, and I'm going to talk you through the topics of today. What's trending? I labeled this presentation Things That Matter in Marketing in 24-25. Obviously, it's always hard to predict the future. If I could, I probably wouldn't be working in an agency because I would be very, very rich and sitting on my private island. But we always try to do best guesses and best estimates. And one thing I learned over the last 15 years of doing this job, trying to predict what's happening in marketing, what's becoming important, is always understanding that things build up on each other, right? All the trends that we're looking at this year, they will not be gone starting January 1st. They will still be relevant for the years to come, but new things will build on top of it. One big privilege of my job, and I'm part of the innovation team at Media Plus here in Munich, is that we get to travel to a lot of events and listen to a lot of smart people sharing their visions and ideas for the future. We're hosting one of those events every year here in our House of Communication in Munich, which is the DLD conference. It's a big conference by Hubert Burda Media, a German publisher, and they invite the best and brightest people from around the world for 3 days of really exciting workshops. Then my favorite part of the year, where I get to go every year to Austin, to Texas in the United States, to South by Southwest, which is one of the biggest and most exciting innovation conferences around the world, with a strong focus also on the entertainment business. We have in Hamburg the OMR conference, I think one of Europe's leading conferences for digital marketing every year. And my colleague Simone and I also had the chance to travel to Amsterdam this year to the Next Web conference, very focused on startups in the digital space space, and we always try to collect like all the input, all the insights, all the visions of different companies, different speakers of the different branches, and compile it into a report, trying to find, hey, what's really shaping the future. And I want to walk you through the insights from this year for next year today in this session. Obviously, the big theme for me of 2024 and 2025 is going to be shaping tomorrow and finding this intermission between innovation on the one hand, which is very technology driven nowadays. We are all talking about AI, we're talking about virtual universes, the metaverse, spatial experiences, which is all digital. But we as advertisers, we mustn't forget the human factor, because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is convince consumers that a brand is better than the other, that one product is worth spending hard-earned money on. And I think always falling back to consumer insights, consumer behavior, and then using technology to enable strategies, communication is the way forward. So innovation without the human factor, doesn't really fly. And I think the central topic for our times is that we all live in an era of unprecedented transition. It feels nowadays that nothing is really staying the same. We just talked about it a couple of minutes ago before we started this webinar, that things are moving very fast, and often it feels that they are moving so fast that we have trouble keeping up with everything that is happening. But one of the most important learnings for me this year was to accept that we as a generation today in business and in marketing, we are in charge of this transition. Like, we have known the old world. Some of us even before the internet was a big thing. Some of us knew the beginnings of digital marketing. We lived through various iterations of how social marketing has been developing over the last 10, 15 years, but we are in charge of guiding our whole business into the future. And with the last 2 years and the really extraordinary developments in artificial intelligence, for example, we're seeing that our whole industry is changing, and very rapidly and from the ground up. And we often react with reluctance and fear, and we say, oh, this is going to challenge our business models. This is going to challenge how we make money. This is going to cost us a lot of internal resources because we have to invest. But we should see it as a positive change, because we are in charge and we can shape the future. And I think that was one of the most important learnings that we took away this year from a lot of the talks we listened to, a very optimistic outlook into the future that maybe has been missing severely in the last couple of years. Steffi Czerny, who is the organizer of the DLD conference here in Munich, DLD stands for Digital Life Design, by the way, she said, hey, we are framing our session here about the pursuit of knowledge, like learning from each other, learning about new technology, learning how to make business better. And it's on the one hand our responsibility to keep up with all the latest stuff, but also our duty to guide the use of the technology, so it's a positive net outcome for everyone involved, be it consumers, be it the people in business, us in advertising and in agencies. And the main things I want to look at today are innovations in technology, then a quick outlook on corporate responsibility, because I think that despite all the things going on right now in politics, and we hear about climate change and the catastrophes that follow, like just seen in Valencia, we still have to put a much bigger emphasis on corporate responsibility for the future in terms of ethics, but also in terms of sustainability. And the last part of the deck today, I want to focus on the future of media, what we see happening there, especially in the social space. So what's going on in tech? What's new? I already said it. AI has been and will remain the driving topic in the technology space for the next couple of years. This year in Austin at South by Southwest, Amy Webb, one of the leading futurists, consulting many huge American companies and companies around the world, she said AI is on its own a massive force changing every industry, but we are entering a technological super cycle where it's not only AI that will reshape the whole world. There's a couple of things coming with it. And AI is the leading tech of 24-25, and it will remain so. But we're seeing now that we're coming from this wondrous experimentation that we had over the last 1 to 2 years into a phase where we have to find real solutions that solve real problems, that improve the bottom line, that create more value, that speed up processes, and so on. So it's no longer time to experiment. It's really time to implement with AI. And AI is therefore getting much more focused, far beyond just creating a few funny images with Midjourney or other tools or talking to a chatbot. We have to think about real-world applications that really improve either the user experience for our consumers or speed up processes. We have to think about how AI is changing business, but also changing science and education. And we have to think about what is AI's impact on culture. Because nowadays, with these tools, everyone can be creative. Everyone who has a creative idea can suddenly bring it to life. Like I'm a creative person, but I'm the most unskilled, for example, when it comes to working with creative tools, like bringing my ideas into Photoshop and creating really stunning images, or into video. I'm just not good at it, right? AI enables me to do that, and AI enables a lot of people to suddenly do that. But we have to think about, what does it do to people who make the living creating content in the real world. And this is a slide from Amy Webb's presentation on the Outlook. They release a tech trends report every year, and as you can see, AI and generative AI really have impact on all the industries, from agriculture to telecommunications. There is a use case for AI in all of them, and it's the most holistic technology that we currently have available in the field. And it will impact everyone, including you. Everyone is who is in this call, who is working for a brand, for an agency, because productivity and efficiency will be a topic. We can no longer afford, for example, to spend really precious working force on banal tasks that can be automated. In decision making, in healthcare, in social interactions, we hear a lot, for example, that loneliness is one of the biggest issues of our time in societies around the world. And a lot of people are already using AI companions, for example, to combat their loneliness. This has a positive aspect, right? People maybe feel less alone, but it also has a negative impact because it's not a real connection to a real person. So we have to think about what that means. And also in terms of economics and power dynamics, those who have access to these tools and who can use them, and those who don't. And what does it do to a society where we suddenly have to upskill large parts of the population, of the workforce, to operate with new tools, with new tool sets, and with a new way to create and interact with content. AI is really an enabler for future technology. It can not only boost personal productivity, but also business innovation, right? If we look at content creators, I know Mr. Beast currently a bit in hot water due to a few things going on at his company, but we saw a really interesting talk at OMR from his producer. He said, he's basically one person, right? He has a YouTube channel, largest YouTube channel in the world. He has a huge team behind him, but they use AI in every step of content creation. So in every video that goes out on the channel, there has been a lot of input from AI tools in the ideation phase, really finding the best idea and discarding all the obvious ones, which AI can help you with, in creating different visuals, in rewriting storylines, in speeding up the story and writing process. In terms of localization, huge game changer. Suddenly, every creator around the world, no matter what language he or she speaks, AI enables them to either auto-translate the audio tracks or generate subtitles really easily, which has been a lot of work before, often relied on crowdsourcing. And especially when it comes to the data aspect, you suddenly have all new tools and opportunities to really understand what in your content resonated well with the audience and far beyond. So AI for content creators can be a smart partner in every step to optimize workflows, to automate mundane tasks, and to provide insights that we haven't had before. It goes far beyond content creation, however. At the next web conference, we had a session with Glenn Vogelfon, the CEO of Booking.com, biggest Dutch travel provider, now a worldwide juggernaut in terms of travel bookings. And Booking.com not only has the vision to have all the different rental cars, airlines, hotels, bed and breakfasts on their platform, what they want to really do and provide for their consumers in the future is the connected trip, right? So if you book a travel nowadays, you often book a separate flight, then a hotel, then a rental car. And if anything goes wrong in this process, you're really, it comes back to you that you have to call your hotel that you're going to arrive late. You have to call the rental agency that you're going to pick up the car later because your flight was delayed. And in the vision of booking.com, their platform would handle all of this, right? One centralized customer service, AI-driven, that basically enables AI agents of all the different partners in a travel process to interact with each other, removing friction, being the central point of contact to you, the consumer, so you don't have to really care about anything. It all automatically solved for you, and would really, create a whole new service level when it comes to travel. As someone who travels a lot and has been experienced delays in trains, flights, no matter where in Europe over the last 6 to 12 months, this would be a blessing. I hope that Mr. Vogel's vision comes true anytime soon. AI can really help us in decision making, especially in marketing, where we have a lot of data, especially when you're talking about e-commerce, about digital retail, about search marketing, about content creation for social platforms such as TikTok. We get a lot of data points back, and often we lack the capacities and the resources to really analyze this data. With AI, we can automate a lot of that. We can make better decisions about which products should we feature. How does our search strategy currently work? There's a lot of tools and benefits that come with it that we will use in the future and already do and will continue to do next year. So what's next for AI? Because generative AI is one subsection of AI, has been a whole success in 23, 24, and will be relevant for 25 and beyond. But what's after that, right? Currently, we're talking about large language models. Like the whole AI hype right now is large language models like GPT-4 and GPT-5 and so on. But what's the future, right? Today, the tools can translate our inputs into the output in terms of images, text. So it's text to image, text to video, text to code, whatever. The future of AI is about LAMs, and that's not large language models, it's large action models. And the large language model can basically translate the literal prompt into anything you want to have it to be, right? Program code, video, music, whatever. The large action model is basically assisted thinking, which elevates AI to a point where it really understands the user and the current situation that the user is in. So the model is aware of the user's surroundings. Is it inside? Is it outside? Is it warm? Is it cold? Is there a lot of noise going on? Is there a conversation going on? For example, is the body language of the user somehow different because it can see you or feel you because it's, for example, a fitness tracker that sees, hey, my heart rate is rising. Maybe I'm nervous. Maybe I need different support now. So large action models want to predict the future, and they're still statistical models, just like the large language models, right? An LLM will, based on your text input, try to predict what the best fitting solution for it is based on an algorithm. And the large action model is going to do the same, but with different input variables. It's not just the text that you enter into a prompt, it's all the measured data streams around you, the user, and the tool is using that. So how could this look like? For example, if we have fitness trackers, or if we're wearing, for example, spatial glasses on our heads that have cameras that can scan the room, suddenly the technology becomes aware around everything that we do. For a large action model, you'll need a lot of input data. And the vision is that a large action model will not be pre-trained on stuff you find on the internet, like text, video, images, but constantly trained in real time on the data that is all around us. And it can be it can use many different input sources to train. For example, data created by your car that you're currently driving in, by your workplace, because the desk knows that you're sitting in it. The lighting knows that there's a person here. In travel, in communication, in entertainment, in various digital services, in wearables, in our personal computing devices like our smartphones, our headphones, our laptops, and so on, down to robotics, household robotics, and so on. So all these tools will constantly gather data, feed them into a model, and try to assist the user in making the next decision, right? And we've seen already the vision of the tech industry where this could go, right? At the consumer technology fair this year in Las Vegas, we've seen the launch of countless of new products. Some of them already off the market because they didn't really work properly. But you can see where the vision is coming in. Releasing a lot of gadgets that people carry around with them that basically gather input data from around the world and from the user by being close to them. This can be tools like the AI pin that listens to all your conversations and you can reference them later. This can be pendants that you wear around your neck that also record all the sounds, all the things you said during a day and to who you said it. And you can reference that back later and ask the model, hey, who did I talk to about going to golf next week, right? And it can answer it back to you. Meta's approach together with Ray-Ban to release these AR glasses that enable you to film your environment, get data back, use them. Apple with the Vision Pro, which is by far the most powerful of these devices, they all tend into a direction that technology becomes situationally aware and really understands in what context am I currently living in, and feed that data back into an AI model and really be a perfect assistant for your everyday life, for your workday, for your free time, and so on. As I said, some of these devices don't really work that well yet, but the vision is clear, and we're going to see a lot more from that starting next year at CES, maybe in January, and throughout 2025, because AI is the thing right now, and large action models might actually be the future. Then the second big tech topic of this year, the spatial web, obviously fueled by the launch of Apple's Vision Pro, basically the next step for the metaverse. Everyone remember this, the sad outlook that we had on the metaverse, for example, with Decentraland, when it was a browser-based game that looked a bit like Minecraft or like a game from the PlayStation 2. Obviously, people didn't resonate very well with that vision of a digital environment where you could live in, because it looks like a bad video game, right? And it was a bad video game when it comes down to that. But spatial web is really the evolution of the internet into a three-dimensional space where we really integrate physical and virtual worlds and really create immersive digital spaces that we can use for business, for entertainment, for community engagement in our free time. And the really positive side of spatial web is that it's visible. I really can see it, it's touchable, and it's audible. So it's a multisensory experience that we can use for all these things that involve high immersion and really feeling in living in the moment. And here at the House of Communication, where I'm working in the service plan group, we have our own department, Planet Studios. And Mike, who heads this department, he says, spatial experiences really enable us to navigate and subconsciously consume massive amounts of information. Because if you live in a virtual environment, or if you see something in 3D and really are immersed in it, you can take in so much more information than we're just reading about it, looking at a video from something, because you're really in it. So the human brain is capable of absorbing over 180,000 times more information if you're immersed in or environment in a digital space than if you consume it in regular media by reading, by watching, by listening to something. So that's a really cool thing to immerse people in brand stories, in media, in a whole new level. And as I just seen, you really are living in the moment, and this is the true power of spatial web. And obviously, we heard a lot about the Vision Pro being a flop because it's too expensive. It's just for developers. Doesn't really have the real-world applications yet. And this is true. But it's a prototype of a device that really shows where the future of computing is going to lie. And I think 6, 7, 8 years ago, when VR had the second or third renaissance, however you count it, we had the same things, right? And it didn't really take off yet. But we see that this is a iterative process again, that every couple of years this tech will be a large step forward. And now we have AI coming in really enabling us to do really interesting things already today. And this will, absolutely be the future of computing and the future of how we experience digital content in the digital worlds. And with that, new forms of entertainment are being created. I think next year is the 25th anniversary of the Blair Witch Project, which I recently heard on a podcast and suddenly felt very old because I saw the original one in cinema. But for example, there's a really cool spatial experience from the Blair Witch Project makers that you can relive horror in. There's this whole new hardware category with the vision that Apple has, but a lot of other players in that space as well, about the future of work, about interacting between the physical and the digital space, where it basically becomes a digital overlay over our real world, and we can interact with the content whenever we want, and probably in the future without wearing this huge, chunky and heavy glass on our heads. For communication, for watching movies, for really being inspired about digital spaces and digital stuff. We already can use it today for bringing people into new experiences. This is a case from BMW together with Red Bull. BMW M, like the motorsport division of BMW, and they really wanted to give the people who are into driving fast, into fun driving experiences, the experience of driving on Mars, right? And obviously today you can't drive a car on Mars because we can't get you up there fast enough and back, but we can put people in a special experience where they can drive a real car, but it looks like they were driving on the red planet, drifting in the red sand, which is a really great way of telling whole new brand stories in ways that haven't been possible before. We here at Serviceplan, we use Spatial Web for a new way of employer branding. For example, our whole onboarding journey, where we welcome new colleagues in our organization, is built in a virtual environment where they can learn about our philosophy, how we do business, how we interact with colleagues in a really fun and playful way. And it's a really cool way to get a workforce on board that maybe not even live in the same city anymore, that doesn't work in the same office. We are 6,000 people around the globe. In this way, we can really give people a common understanding on what Serviceplan Group is all about and how we, as a group, what's our culture, what's our vision, and how we all fit together. So 95% of our decision making is based on intuition and instinct. And with Spatial Web and these experiences, we really have tools to talk to those 95% because it's like living that moment we are currently in. And there's a whole new way of use cases that are going to be developed for these kinds of devices. I think one of the most exciting ones is captured reality. If you think about how consumers today get their memories, it's mostly photos, right? Used to be photos for the last 100 years. Nowadays, they're digital photos. The younger generations often using video to capture certain memories. Sometimes everyone is mad at them because they are going to a concert and film half the thing because they want to keep the memory of this concert alive. What about living in your memories, right? Special technology enables us to do that because we can take, for example, a 3D video of our kids' first steps, of our kids' first day at school, of the time where my wife ran her first marathon and came over the finishing line. And I can capture it in 3D and we can relive it in 3D, like being in that moment through spatial tech, which I think is a really powerful way of playing with emotion and memory. We will have new ways of being productive in a 3D space, maybe coming together, having this physical connection between people. Nowadays, everyone is like, hey, get back to the office because we have to work together. What if we got together in a digital space that is beyond Microsoft Teams and Zoom on a 2D screen? What if it is in a 3D space, right? There's whole new use cases for sound. If you listen to the latest Apple announcement, how they use their headphones as hearing aids now, I think this really showcases where, entertainment technology is going. It gets an additional value, right? And having spatial web devices that are AI powered with us all day, we suddenly, for example, can overcome language barriers because the device can translate spoken language to us in real time, and we can speak back in our language, and the person in front of us understands us, right? So it eliminates the need for me now speaking English to you, which is neither of our native languages, but I could be just speaking in German, and you would get the auto translation in Spanish. And we're almost there where this is a feasible way of communicating with each other. So if you're a Star Trek fan like me, the universal translator, it's almost here. Already talked about the large action models that will enable generative AI to be a much more better assistant, give better predictions because they are aware of your surroundings and what's currently happening. And also in education and creativity, we have whole new ways of visualize and use abstract things around us. So what's the next frontier in AI and spatial web? It might be actually large vision models, right? Where models are capable of understanding visual information at scale and really interpreting complex visual data. There's already tools today that can do that. For example, Google Gemini has this really nice use case where you can walk around and film things, for example, on your desk, and it will realize, oh, this is a computer, this is a vase, this is a flower, and you can interact with it, and it can answer questions based on the visual input it gets. And in the future, we're going to have a lot more of that, right? The assistants will be available that have vision of our surroundings, that have perception of what's happening around us, what's in front of us, that can provide context for that. Enough of tech. Let's jump to corporate responsibility. I already mentioned we are living in times that are uncertain. A lot of us, a lot of companies nowadays, a lot of our clients, a lot of agencies, we are very focused on the bottom line right now because economics are hard across the world. But we see and we are reminded, sadly, multiple times per day, per month, that there's an issue, for example, in terms of sustainability, and that we really have to be more cautious. And sustainability and social responsibility, they have to and they will become even more integral to corporate strategies. Because even if they're not the hype topics anymore that they maybe have been 1 or 2 years ago, we see that a lot of consumer demand nowadays is already there. People expect you to be sustainable. They expect you to be socially responsible. It's not a nice bonus anymore that you can put on top of your existing brand communication. It has to be an integrated core business value for a lot of brands. And the demand for sustainable brands is growing. We, for example, see a further reduction in single-use plastics around the world. We see a huge growth of the second-hand market, being in clothing, being in electronics. So this consumer consciousness, despite all the things going on, has taken hold, and I think brands will have to think about and communicate about sustainable production, about their CSR values, balancing profit and purpose, about increased consumer demand and how to answer it responsibly, but also about ethical practices when it comes to sourcing, when it comes to production. So all of this is not going away, and I think it's also up to us as advertisers to sometimes remind our clients that consumers really care about these things, and it's no longer optional to do good. It has to be part of the core business strategy. And a couple of brands that are really trailblazers in that regard. One of them is Veja, a French sneaker brand. I think I heard first about Veja 7-8 years ago when Emmanuel Macron was wearing them somewhere, and I saw this tagged on Instagram, and I was like, these are cool sneakers, what are they? And this was the first time I heard about these shoes, and for the longest time, they've only been available in France. But they grew to a global phenomenon with no advertising, right? They are now listed in basically every upscale department store. You can buy Veja sneakers. They have no investors. They have no really big growth strategy. They focus on sustainable production and materials. And they are really proud about that. And they show that you can be successful through a strategy like that, where you put sustainable production at the core of your business and everything you do. Another really cool example that is a cool European player that has been growing substantially over the last couple of years is Tony Chocolonely out of the Netherlands, where they really try to, as a core to their business, to raise awareness about the social injustice in chocolate production, which all the big players are involved in, right? Sourcing and also the environmental impact that it has. And they from the beginning said, hey, we want to break this cycle, we want to be different, we want to build our brand on top of the central promise. And also really have courage and be a fun brand on top of it, be very colorful and be very out there. And I think they really do this in terms of how they communicate, because they try to be unique. They try to be really personalized for people as well. They had this really nice case last year where you could go to this pop-up store and design your own packaging, for example. They have many special editions. They collaborate with content creators and then not only supply product, for example, for a meet and greet, they create personalized things for this exact session. And I think it's a really cool brand where you can learn a lot from how to run a sustainable business.
Chocolate lovers.
So, as Robert Habeck, the German Minister for the Economy, said at OMR, let's tell these success stories of how sustainable production, how sustainable brands can grow and be successful. And there is something stronger than excluding other brands. Like, build this hopeful narrative around your brands and show that others can do the same, because I think it's worth it. So on to the future of marketing. Obviously, the biggest part of today's session, because it's the closest to all of our hearts as advertisers. Marketing is facing various challenges in this transitioning world. I already mentioned a few. We have this big technology shift. We have new habits in media consumption and usage that will continue over the next couple of years. And I think three of the most important fields that we have to look at, they are in sometimes contradictions to each other, right? On the one hand, we've seen over the last 2 to 3 years really eroding brand relationships because of eroding consumer loyalty. And that has been driven, obviously, by economic demands, price increases, inflation, companies having to cut back on services, on benefits they provide, cutting back on loyalty programs. And that all led to consumers being much more wary about their relationship to a brand because they don't feel seen anymore. And one of my central messages this year was, hey, you want to be a love brand, bring back the love. Where is the love that you are showing your consumers? Because you can't expect to be loved if you don't give anything, right? The other thing that we're seeing increasingly is samification in a world where everything is really tailored to algorithms and economic benefit. You end up with a lot of things that look and feel the same because they're the most efficient and the ones that are working, but it's becoming really hard to differentiate yourself if everything and all your competitors look the same as you do. And the third big pillar is tech and innovation overload. And that's always a bit of a tricky story for me to tell because I'm the innovation director at a media agency. My job is to drive innovation and to show around the shiny new tools and say, hey, look what we can do in spatial and AI and here in VR and here in gaming. But at the end of the day, we often forget that our consumers aren't involved in these rapid changes as deeply as we are, and that we often leave them behind, right? If you go out on the street and ask people, hey, what benefits do you see in spatial technology? Everyone is going to say, what's spatial technology? I have no idea what it is. I was already out when you came up with the metaverse, right? And the metaverse was after multiplayer gaming, and that was after gaming, and that was after that. So we often forget that tech adaptation in the real world takes a lot longer than in our business and in our industry. So on top of these changes in the consumer relationship, we're seeing rapidly changing media landscapes, and digital platforms are at the forefront from that. I think we all just got used to the internet basically meaning, hey, stuff that's happening on social platforms. And because who still reads websites anymore, right? As sad as it is, people get their news from social networks, they get their news from Instagram and TikTok. But nowadays we see that this big shift of social networks becoming digital communities really has strong impact on how we as advertisers and people, for example, in media should think about these touch points. Because I think the biggest shift that we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years with the rise of TikTok, and this is just going to continue on all other platforms, is the shift from social graph to content graph. It doesn't really matter anymore who we follow on social media and who follows us. It's going to matter what we are passionate about, which topics do we really care about. And this is the content that we're going to see and that we're going to consume, be it on YouTube, be it on TikTok, be it on Instagram. on Facebook, even in our, for example, in the way we consume news, because it's gonna be delivered to us in the topics that we care about, and not necessarily because I follow a certain amount of people and they see their updates, because that's not what social is today anymore, right? At least the public part. Now, if you're in advertising, you're thinking about, yeah, social media is wasn't this about interaction between people and real conversations? Where did this all go? And this hasn't vanished. It's just not as visible anymore, because all the interactions between people vanished to private channels. That's nowadays happening in Instagram DMs, in WhatsApp groups. It's happening in one-to-one chats. It's happening on platforms like Reddit and Discord that are semi-public, but where communities among each other talk, give advice, give recommendations. And for us as advertisers, it's going to be a really difficult challenge to address both of these worlds, right? For the public social web, we have to produce entertainment content. For the private social web, we have to really get into conversations. We really have to unlock these private spaces, right? But what's important, especially for the public part, is this transformation of consuming content to very personalized experiences that are tailored around our personal interests and our passions, is that it makes people feel seen. It makes them feel understood. Because if I have the feeling that I get a lot of content very dear to my heart and to my very personal interests, I feel, hey, maybe there's more people like me out there, and it makes me feel connected. And this is something as a brand that you can really latch onto, because you can give people, through personalization and niche content, the feeling, hey, you are a perfect fit for us and we are for you. So why not be loyal to our brand and our communication, right? But that means that dynamics on social media will change, and that we have to rethink a lot of the strategies that we're using nowadays. On the one hand, social media will become much more competitive. And what I mean by that is we have new competitors emerging in different fields. TikTok is the best example. I often say TikTok has replaced television for large amounts of young people. Like, it has replaced streaming services. It has replaced platforms like YouTube, like Twitch, because TikTok has everything, right? It has this really tailored algorithm. It has these engaging content formats. It has a lot of data. So TikTok is really trying to become this cultural juggernaut that is not going to go away anymore. And it's not about just dancing teenagers anymore. It's a really serious entertainment platform nowadays. Meta, on the other hand, is making a lot of strategic moves, integrating AI into their platform. If you listen to the latest earnings call that Mark Zuckerberg did last week with his investors, he basically went all in on this. And he said, hey, we are very heavily invested with bringing more AI-generated content and content summaries to our platforms, because we believe that this is what people want. They want efficient access to the things they care about. They have a lot of tools for advertisers, for creators on their platform to use AI. They're investing into this whole virtual influencer business. It hasn't really taken off yet, but is an interesting way to play around with virtual characters. So Meta is all in there. And obviously they're heavily setting on generative AI, because they have all these massive amounts of content on their platforms, right? And they can enable new tools to just pull all the data out of there and give users much better and more interesting access, and new tools to create with generative AI right in the Meta apps and on the Meta platforms. Then the second part, monetization strategies will evolve significantly next year, and continue to do so, because we have still a lot of underutilized social media platforms. I just talked about the private social web, and one of the big players there is WhatsApp, and it's still so underutilized in advertising. There's a lot of user engagement, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of intimate social experiences, but hardly anyone is doing anything with it, because it's a new channel. It doesn't really feel right yet to be there, but there's a lot of good reasons to. It has insane opening rates, right? If you compare this to email, you have the way to nowadays have ways to build communities on WhatsApp, and I think a lot of brands should look closer at that and utilize that more, because it's the fastest way to interact with consumers, to give people a really new way of consumer service, because they are used to this platform. They're using it every day to communicate with their friends, with their peers, with their workmates. Why not use it to communicate with you, right? With a brand. We also have new paid social strategies, because nowadays, by catering towards individual interests, we have a lot more assets that we can use and should use in social advertising. We can use individual signals coming from the audiences. We have a lot of influencer and creator content that we can give to the algorithm and let it build the campaigns for us. And I know that's a big change in thinking about how we plan campaigns in media, but if we want to really make the most out of these very niche topics about if we want to integrate all the benefits AI production can give us, this is the way forward, using many different assets to find what performs best in which sub-community. And we see which kinds of tools Meta and Google and so on are launching, and they're all going in this direction of having a multitude of assets for different target groups, so we get the best outcome here. Because the traditional setup was predefined audience, specific content, here's one asset, campaign launch. The new setup is as many different assets as possible, different copies, different taglines, different images, different activation triggers, and then just to let the algorithm on the platform do its thing, reaching the audience and see what performs best, right? So how does advertising here work? We have to basically look at it a bit differently. It should be consumer first. There's a lot of more collaboration involved and a lot of more co-creation. And Crystal Walter from TikTok said this nicely at South by. She said advertising is far from dead. It just looks very different in the age of TikTok and these platforms. And we should look at things like cultural fluency, right? Really thinking about what's the culture of a certain platform and not just throwing our campaign and our messaging on there, but really thinking what's special about TikTok, about Twitch, about WhatsApp, about Snapchat, whatever. Really think about, do the brand constraints that we put on ourselves still really matter here, or is it more important to build a relationship with people, become a bit more unhinged, for example. Prioritizing entertainment, obviously working very well on these platforms because it's the new television, and also being interactive and have people give people ways to participate. And the real important part for the next couple of years will be community building. In everything we do, we have to think in communities and we have to build these communities. And that's not something new. Brian Solis already said this 10 years ago, but I think we never really had the opportunity like we have today through the many different things. Obviously, authenticity, a big factor here, building trust, deepening connection with audiences, and not excluding, being including instead of exclusive, with real humans, with authentic moments, and with easy to consume content. And for example, one big thing, authentic content wins over polished perfection nowadays, especially with young audiences. Nobody wants to look at an Instagram feed that is just very glossy product shots. It should be applications from the real world that look where people really use products and try them out, and it's much more relatable, especially to Gen Z and beyond. And I think a few brands are already taken note of that, because it feels more like a content that you would see from your favorite creator on a certain platform. And then it would be like a catalog that you're looking at. There's also another underutilized platform, for example, Snapchat, which is this fantastic one-to-one community platform, has a lot of users in all European markets that we often just forget, right? There's a lot of cool possibilities that it can use with AR on the platform. There's a lot more personal exchange between people there because it's still this smaller niche platform, but I think you can build close connections through that and use the fantastic opportunities with augmented reality on top of that. User-centric content is really important because we want to be attention-grabbing. There's a lot of competition in the feed, right? So we should do something that is entertaining, that is shareable, creating these shareable moments to unlock access to the private social media spaces. And really should focus on things that anyone might enjoy. Humor, personal relatability, people that people already know, so celebrities, content creators, bring them into your brand stories, be funny, be engaging, go out there, because humor, that we've already seen this year at the Cannes Lions Festival, humor in advertising is really back because it's an attention grabber and it gets people involved in talking about your campaigns. I'm going to skip the videos quickly so we don't run out of time.
What's my secret?
I think the central message here is to engage people on all these platforms. Michael Krivicka from that board guy, the small New York agency, he said, don't make ads. like make entertainment, make shareable content, make unique content, authentic, raw, creative. And this was a campaign that also won a couple of lands this year in Cannes from the promotion for the Wednesday series on Netflix, where they had this hand from the series running around in New York and then just filmed behind the scenes small snippets, put all the content on social, and was a huge success. And a really great campaign and really showed how you can advertise a new show differently than before by being out there in the real world, being authentic, being surprising. Obviously, that comes with a certain cultural relevance, so we should be tuned in into all the current trends, the current moments that resonate with our community, be it cultural moments, be it relatable content, be it the current zeitgeist in terms of memes, in terms of pop culture. That is really important for brands to be tuned into. Of course, it's hard to monitor, so reach out to the people who live on these platforms within your organizations and get them involved in everything. And obviously, memes, I already mentioned this, really powerful tool. I think the brand that does this best is by far Duolingo, but there's many more that are nowadays really tuned into the day-to-day of what's happening on a certain platform and being tuned into this cultural moment here. That now goes as far as one of our clients, Deichmann, a German shoe brand, very traditional family-owned business. They are now on TikTok starting the battle of the brands, where their community managers basically challenged other brands to for a live show that will be streamed on TikTok and on Twitch. And if you told me that 2 years ago, that our really traditional and very safe playing client would suddenly be out there on TikTok challenging the brand managers from other global brands to a game show, I would say, yeah, you're crazy. But it's exactly that kind of thing that works on these platforms and that creates this close connection to a young audience for a more traditional brand that might not have been relevant in their target group a couple of years ago. So, sorry. What should you take away from today? We've seen a lot of developments in technology. Obviously, AI is the enabler of future tech. We have to learn about responsible usage on the one hand, but we also really need to look at each other and say, what can we do today and what can we do tomorrow in terms of really leveraging the efficiency gains that AI brings us. So every agency, every brand should have people working on really creating feasible solutions. It's not the time to experiment anymore because you're going to be left behind if you do. The second is consumer consciousness. Just because the world is complicated right now hasn't been going away. It's even more ingrained. I almost call it mainstream. And we really should talk about these positive stories about brands that are already doing this and encourage everyone to invest into the future and have a positive outlook on the future, and that you can build sustainable and socially responsible brands and campaigns nowadays. And the third one, the media landscape is changing heavily. Social is the new TV, but you have to really understand the new rules and of engagement in this space, being authentic, getting access to people's private social media, while at the same time providing entertainment content for public social media is key to be successful there. Be user-centric, dive down into niches, be relatable, and you're going to be successful. And I want to close with a favorite quote of mine of one of my favorite speakers that I look forward to seeing every year at South by. He's Rohit Bhargava. He has a fantastic newsletter called Non-Obvious Thinking and Non-Obvious Trends. And he said, obvious thinking really leads to a failure of imagination. And the only future that we can make is one we can imagine ourselves. So we should try to understand people, because the people who understand people will always win. With that, I want to close for today. I hope there were a few inspiring thoughts in there, a few new things that you learned. If you want to learn more about innovation, feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me via email or to my colleague Simone, who had prepared today's deck. So thank you very much for your time and attention, and I'm looking forward to any questions that might arise in today's session. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. It's been, very interesting, because you have been going through technology, social responsibility, all this community and authenticity, which is, is key in these days for getting consumer trust. I have a question while we wait for some questions from the audience, because some of us work in media, okay, and I'm wondering what you think media should do to navigate these social networks attention? Okay, I mean, because you mentioned the attention as the key element, and we have all these media that produce very trustworthy articles and opinions, but then most of the people is in social networks using their time. So what they could do really to catch the attention of people, and how they can really relaunch or get a new impulse that people, that make people think of media again, as has been the case for many years now.
I think that's a very, very important question, especially if you're looking at the way where people get their news from nowadays, right? And trusted and established brands have issues. For example, if you're an established newspaper or the evening news that has been airing for the last 30 years on television, I think one of the key things that you as a media brand must do is finding this balance between sticking to what makes you strong, is the reliability and the history of your brand, and being in a certain way and being very reliable and serious. But on the other hand, opening up to the culture of these platforms, right? And I think an example that has been doing a really good job at that is, if you look in Germany, we have the Tagesschau. That's the evening news brand of the public television channel in Germany that has been airing since 1949. So basically has 70 years history. And what they do is that they have this 15-minute segment on TV every night, right? And it's always the same. It's always the same format. It hasn't changed in decades. But what they do is on every channel that they're active, they try to adapt their way of presentation and the news to the channel. So on TikTok, it's very fast, it's cut very, very quickly. It's a bit more humorous, but it has the same topics, right? They repackage what they tell, and they tell the story in a new way to a younger audiences that gets their news, for example, from Instagram and from a reel, from a TikTok video, from YouTube. So they go on these different channels and use them in a way that makes sense for them. And now they are even doing a weekly show on Twitch, where they have a 2-hour live stream where they talk about the important news topics of the week, but in a way that you would do in a video podcast with a live audience, right? So it's very interactive. It's there's questions from the audience, and they really adapt to the platform. And I think that's the important part. You can't just expect people to consume your media the same way, but you really have to adapt to the platform. And I think that's true for a lot of brands as well. If you're a brand and you don't really adopt to the rules of the platform, you're not gonna compete, right? And it's the same for traditional media brands.
Mm-hmm. Good, very interesting. I think that some questions has come. Yeah.
The question is from John. Thanks for the great presentation. Doubts about number one: to whom is addressed those innovation trends to sell? To everyone, and there's going to be some referee to decide about new sustainability. Yeah. Well, I don't really understand the first part of the question. So, to whom is addressed those innovation trends to sell? Does it mean like who are tech innovations for? Like all the consumers out there? In theory, yes. Because, for example, if you think about AI can change the user interfaces for digital services for pretty much all your users, right? So it becomes a tool that is relevant for your Gen Z audience, but also for your 65 plus audience, because they interact with your website in a different way, or with your app, right? If you're talking about spatial app, that's a different story, I think, because then you need people who are more tech savvy, at least in the beginning. So we're talking about younger audiences, maybe more male focused, but those are the same people, for example, who first get into video games, who first try out new platforms. So it's more early adopters and early followers than the mainstream. But when the time comes where the production of the devices becomes very cheap and it becomes mainstream, and suddenly every smartphone is enabled for all these features, your audience becomes everyone again, right? So thinking about what we can do with it today is relevant to be up to speed later when the mainstream adoption follows. For the second part, what I'm hearing from this question is, who decides if sustainability really is going to be the way forward? from my perspective, it's us who work in this business, right? Because I think we have a social responsibility to do that, and a lot of our consumers it resonates well with. So shouldn't it be up to us, and shouldn't we follow this trend? Is the one answer. The other answer is, if you look at all big companies within the European Union, but also in the Fortune 500 in the United States, they all have CSR criteria in their annual reports. So it plays a role in, for example, corporate investing already. So this is established on a foundational level how we do business worldwide, at least in the Western markets. So I think it's not really optional anymore, and we should continue going this path, because what's the alternative, right? Another question, talking about consumer consciousness, I don't really see it. Maybe it's just environment. So I was wondering, is the trend of consumer consciousness more relevant to certain sectors than in others? Which sectors would those be? And is this truly something we're seeing predominantly in the younger generations? Yeah, it goes in a different, in the same direction as I just mentioned. I think it's a lot is consumer goods, even in the very in the most conservative parts, at least in my perspective, in the German market, this is no longer optional, and people really use it as a differentiator, right? I think especially food, especially production, but also in terms of what can a true global brand be if it's not built on a sustainable foundation, right? I think if you look at e-commerce in the fashion industry, for example, there's this big divide between sustainable fashion that everyone aspires to be, but it's expensive, right? So young consumers flock to platforms like Shein and Temu and buy really cheap stuff. But I think even those who do it are conscious about doing it, right? So selling a brand story even slightly above this level of Chinese dropshipping is already a net win, because it might convince people to shop differently, because very down they know that it's not sustainable and it's not a sustainable thing for the future. But I'm willing to say that in terms of economic uncertainty, people might not really put this forward anymore when it comes to food. But I think we have, after this decade of talking about sustainability, really established this baseline where people at least know that it's wrong, even if it doesn't necessarily change their behavior just yet, because times are hard, there's inflation, everything is going on. So yeah. And yeah, I think it's more predominant in the younger generations, but also in the older ones. I think it's like this bowl shape where people really care about these things. The one about leaving a legacy, the other ones about doing things differently than their parents did, for example. I think we're over with time. I don't know, maybe one more question. Anytime. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think there's no more questions. And well, sustainability is a big area to talk about, especially in the digital media space as well, because of course there's a lot of resources as well that are needed. And well, we don't think about how many resources we need in digital, and we are all crazy about digital, and we spend most of our time with our mobiles. But
one more thought, one more wild prediction from myself. Sustainable AI is gonna be one of the next big talking points, because nobody really talks about the insane amount of energy and resources that AI uses for every query, right? So sustainable AI will be one of the big things for 2025 that people will start talking about, and that will be a differentiator in how we sell this and how we market this, especially in our own products. So that should be kept in mind as well.
Yeah.
All right. But yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Alex. It's been tremendously interesting, and this set up us for 2025 just to think strategically. And it's been a pleasure. Okay, and thank you for your effort, because preparing a presentation and giving a presentation takes effort and time. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and I hope there was some interesting thoughts in there. Thank you very much, and see you hopefully next time.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Bye, everyone.